incredibly impressed with what Arne Slot has done. If you'd have given the 2 11s and you'd have said, right, who's going to be the standout player here? I'm not even sure Curtis Jones would be in the top 5. And that's massive credit to him.
Yes, some issues for Chelsea, but credit to Liverpool. It was their first big test passed, and I think they're going to be there or thereabouts come the end of the season.
Chelsea's ambitions this season are not to challenge Liverpool. They're not to challenge Arsenal, Manchester City for the title. Chelsea's ambitions this season have got to be to try and somehow get themselves back into, I'd probably say the Champions League, but I think they'd settle for Europa League.
The big issue that we think they have, which is the goalkeeper. You know, I thought Robert Sanchez was an absolute car crash. I still think when you spent as much money as Chelsea have, if you've got question marks over your centre forward and your goalkeeper, that's a flaw in the recruitment policy. I think that will hold them back this season.
Hello and welcome to Premier League All Access. The headlines this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you're watching the podcast. Manchester City escape with 3 points from Molineux. Liverpool passed their first test. And Arsenal drop points in a big clash at the South Coast. Let's get into the podcast. Okay, it's time to look back at the Premier League weekend. Scott Minto is here, so is Alex Crook Scott. You were at the game of the weekend, arguably the big comeback for Leicester City.
Oh, mate, it was an incredible game. I have to say, I did not see that coming at half-time. Steve Cooper's side was out. He made substitutions. That 2-0 scoreline, I'm going to have to stop saying it's not a difficult one.
Certainly is. I got myself in a little bit of trouble this weekend. Unintentionally, obviously. I know that's usually Crook's way of doing things, not mine. But yeah, it was my turn this weekend. You know, I'm very close with Gary O'Neill, the Wolves boss, Sean Derry, the coach there, because of our time together down the South Coast at Portsmouth. Spent 6-7 years together down there. Known Gary and his wife Donna since they were 17. Well, yesterday, I happened to find myself on air at talkSPORT, Sunday session, 1:30 till 6:30 every Sunday, by the way, when I thought that Wolves had escaped a last-minute defeat at the hands of Jon Stones and the might of Manchester City. I mean, Wolves getting a point against City would have been massive for Gary and for Sean. They haven't won yet. They've been under the cosh from all angles. And I'll be honest, I got a little bit excited for my mate at that moment in time. I gave it the whole yes, as if to say he was, going to get away without a defeat. Now, I didn't know this, but apparently I was being filmed by the talkSPORT social media team at this moment, who decided to release it to the internet. And I can see why Manchester City fans, having viewed that, might think that I am anti-Manchester City or I'm not their biggest fan. However, it's got nothing to do with you, honestly. It's got nothing to do with you. It's not about you. It's about my mate who I don't want to get sacked. Perry Groves, on the other hand, who's also in the clip, he's a massive gooner. He don't want you to win. But me, I don't really care whether you do or you don't. I just like the drama of the football. And I did want Gary to get a bit of a break because, in fairness, he has gone through the mill, especially with VAR. In his time as head coach, I remember a situation down at Fulham where he ended up doing an 8-minute interview, I think, talking about the VAR issues that had gone against him, Howard Webb and all that kind of stuff. And subsequently, I just thought, it would be great for him if he got away with it. But he didn't, and Manchester City won. And actually, when you look back at the goal and the mechanics of the goal, something I said on air yesterday, initially I thought it was a goal and it should stand. Then I watched that back again and I saw an incident just beforehand and I thought, oh no, that should be ruled out. Then I watched it again and I thought, oh no, I think it's a goal. And I changed my mind about 3 or 4 times. And we'll get into why it was a goal in the next section of the programme. Loads to get into actually this weekend, including Liverpool passing their first real test. The first major test for Liverpool has been passed. They've beaten Chelsea by 2-1. And I have to say, I didn't expect to be talking about this as a Curtis Jones show when I woke up yesterday morning. But Curtis Jones was probably, Scott Minto, not only the best player of the pitch, but maybe the player of the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I was watching it at home and sort of making notes as I went along. I thought a great game at a great stadium with 2 great clubs. And you remember back in the day, the old Subbuteo, it was like red versus blue. And it just, visually, aesthetically, it just looks so pleasing on the eye with two top teams. And we can come on to Chelsea in a bit where, I've been very, very impressed with what Maresca has done, but incredibly impressed with what Arne Slot has done. And you're absolutely right. If you'd have given the 2-11s and you'd have said, right, who's going to be the standout player here? I'm not even sure Curtis Jones would be in the top 5. And that's massive credit to him, because it's almost like, and we've all been there, that sometimes you're in a team where you feel like you have to play at 8, 9 out of 10 every single week just to keep your place in the team. And it's going to be interesting to see what Curtis Jones does going forward. But not only was he brilliant going forward, obviously he kept Cole Palmer quiet and made that incredible tackle, which from a defending point of view is as good as a goal.
Yeah.
So let's put that as high as what he did going forward as well. It was a magnificent performance.
Chelsea, by contrast, Crook, I thought a little naive, especially with some of their defending.
Well, I think, again, it highlighted the big issue that we think they have, which is the goalkeeper. I thought Robert Sanchez was an absolute car crash yesterday. And if you're going to go to Anfield, you're going to take on a rival for a top 4 place, you need your goalkeeper to be on tip-top form, and he wasn't. So I think certainly that's an area they've got to address moving forward. I understand what you mean. They tried to go toe-to-toe with Liverpool, and obviously that left gaps on the counter-attack. Thought Cole Palmer was underwhelming as well, to be honest. And I wonder if that international break, when he didn't really turn it on for England, has had a bit of an effect on his confidence. So, yes, some issues for Chelsea, but credit to Liverpool. It was their first big test passed, and I think they're going to be there or thereabouts come the end of the season.
Just explain to me as a defender what Levi Colwill is thinking when he commits that foul that gives away the penalty, which actually sets the ball rolling. Chelsea responded actually quite well. They had great chances in the game. Cole Palmer had 2 brilliant chances in the match, which on another day he would have taken, didn't this time around. But Levi Colwill gives away a penalty. I think it's 29 minutes on the clock when Salah, who doesn't score that often against Chelsea, steps up, rams it in. Excellent penalty under pressure. But Levi Colwill seemed to feel the pressure of Anfield just before that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Sam. And I couldn't agree more with Crookie in terms of Robert Sanchez. I mean, that winning goal, when you look where Curtis Jones actually takes that touch, he's about 2 yards out. He's got to come out. He's got to smother. I know what happened earlier in the game, but put that to one side. You're 6'6". I've interviewed him post-match. I felt like an absolute dwarf. Use your presence. But in terms of Levi Colwill, again, you're absolutely spot on. Because if you remember, not that long before, there was an incident with Mo Salah where Mo Salah almost thought he should have had a penalty, and he put his right foot towards Levi Colwill because there was a little bit of a battle between the two. And it felt like that, plus the Anfield crowd, he hadn't calmed down mentally enough. He wasn't composed and in a right position, because you don't make that type of tackle. Was it a penalty? You can argue, Chelsea fans can argue there was not enough contact. The bottom line is he's put the referee to make a decision. And in those situations, 9 times out of 10, is going to be given a penalty. So he'll learn from that. But I've seen that with Levi Colwill a lot. I know he's very highly thought of and a future Chelsea captain perhaps. But he's got to learn in those pressure situations, in the big, big games where it's just small details, moments that will define the particular game that you're playing in. You cannot be the one that makes the mistake, and that's exactly what he did.
Yeah, Chelsea pushed themselves towards the end of the game, and I thought that Renato Vega had a brilliant chance. I mean, a headed chance that went over the top of the crossbar. But again, it's the coolness in those situations. And I think when you look at the two squads, you've got a team in Liverpool who, obviously have gone through a massive change in the summer, obviously have had to deal with a slightly different tweak to their playing approach, but yet have seemingly done that with a few sort of stumbles, by the way. Let's not pretend that they've been perfect, but the results on the pitch show that they've almost been perfect. But Chelsea, who have had brilliant moments and good results, definitely, good performances, yes, but there have been moments in games where that lack of composure has really cost them. And I think that comes by having, one, a very new squad, and two, Crook, a very youthful squad. If you look at it, I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody who's over the age of 25 that was in that team yesterday.
No, and they're going to make mistakes on the job as a result of that. Obviously, getting Reece James back into the team as captain, I think, was a welcome boost for Enzo Maresca, because they are a squad who seem to be lacking a little bit of leadership. Obviously, Enzo Fernandez has had the armband, but he didn't start the game. And again, we've highlighted the goalkeeper already, but you mentioned that lack of ruthlessness in the final third, that decision making. Again, I think that also comes from not having that out and out elite number 9 at the top end of the pitch. I mean, he took his goal well, Nicholas Jackson, but I still think when you spent as much money as Chelsea have, if you've got question marks over your centre forward and your goalkeeper, that's a flaw in the recruitment policy. And I think that will hold them back this season. So we've got a January window coming around. How much money is there to spend in those areas? Maybe not so much, bearing in mind that they're having to tread a fine line when it comes to PSR. So, yeah, I sense your frustrations with Chelsea, but it is a young squad they're building from the future. So I guess you're going to have to settle for these setbacks.
Chelsea are ahead of the game from what I saw and what's happened in the summer. Yes, they're just fallen a little bit short against Liverpool at Anfield, but they went toe to toe, and on another given day, could have got something out of that game. I totally agree with Crookie. I've said it a few times. How can you spend over £1 billion and not have a world-class striker and a world-class goalkeeper? Games are controlled in midfield. They're won in both boxes. Nicholas Jackson, I've defended him, but he's one of those. He should be one of a few, not the only one, really. And Christopher Nkunku's not there, and he's not an out-and-out number 9 anyway.
He had another great chance towards the end as well, didn't he, at the far post, where he could have snuck in and tapped home right at the very end of the game. I agree. Look, I was about to say, Chelsea's ambitions this season are not to challenge Liverpool. They're not to challenge Arsenal, Manchester City for the title. Chelsea's ambitions this season have got to be to try and somehow get themselves back into, I'd probably say the Champions League, but I think they'd settle for Europa League this season because there's a hell of a lot of competition. Aston Villa are ahead of them. Tottenham, maybe they're not, but they should be ahead of them at this stage because they've had a year and a bit with Ange Postecoglou. So there are other clubs that are probably above Chelsea in terms of where their development is. But I think Chelsea at this moment in time started the season pretty well. And although this is a setback, actually, it wasn't the worst performance.
I want to give Maresca a lot of credit here. I've said this before, and I'm happy to say it here. He's lucky really to be the Chelsea manager because he hasn't got the body of work that previous Chelsea managers have needed to become manager of Chelsea Football Club. But what he has done, he's controlled the controllables. He's kept that, even when you've had 40, 50 players, he's kept that core of 25. And you can see that. And that's why I say they're ahead of the game at the moment. And, what he's dealing with at the moment, off the pitch as well as on the pitch, I'd like to give him a lot of credit. I really would.
Okay, let's move on to Wolves against Manchester City. Manchester City nicking it in the last few minutes of the game. So much to talk about from this match. Let's discuss the goal, first of all. My initial reaction was going to be a goal. Second reaction was it's got to be chalked off because of the little push. I didn't see the little push, first of all, from Bernardo Silva, which I think unsettles Jose Sarr. But he's not offside technically when he does that because the ball is at the corner flag and therefore he is behind the ball when it comes in. The difference here is that you have to ask whether or not he is impeding Jose Sarr when Jon Stones heads the ball. And I don't think that he is. I think he impeded him just beforehand, but it was cute and clever rather than a proper disruption. Therefore, I think it's a goal. Listen, I flip-flopped and changed my mind 5 times yesterday after watching 150 replays of it. What was your thought, Crook?
I didn't change my mind at all. I thought it was a goal. I don't think Jose Sarr's getting there for the header. I think actually by the time the ball comes in, Bernardo Silva does all he can to get out of the way. I mean, he's practically on his knees when Jon Stones heads the ball. So I can understand Gary O'Neill's frustration because I think there have been similar issues, similar instances that have gone against Wolves. But I think it would have been unjust if that goal was ruled out. And obviously, I'd rather Wolves took a point than City won the game. But I think it was the right decision.
The issue here is that actually there have been incidents of some things that are very similar, where the decision has been made to rule the goal out. I think there was a situation involving Jamie Vardy not so long ago at Fulham, where he sort of pushed Bernd Leno, got in the way, and was in an offside position when Leicester scored, and I can't even remember whether it was ruled in or ruled out, but there was certainly an incident that Wolves were involved in last year when they scored a goal. Max Kilman was adjudged to have caused a foul, and that goal was ruled out. So Gary O'Neill is citing precedent that has happened to his team previously and suggesting that the similar sort of situation has gone against him, and this time the outcome is different, but it has gone against him again. And he can't understand how that consistency changes over the course of a 6 months period. There hasn't been any tweak to the law during that time. So I understand why he's annoyed about it. But ultimately, does it show that Manchester City, despite their troubles, and they had their troubles in this game, have got the character and the chutzpah to get themselves over the line? Jon Stones has got 2 injury time match-saving goals.
And do you know what? They could end up being very, very crucial points. And where we're seeing, Liverpool losing as well as they're doing. And by the way, I didn't give enough credit to Arne Slot and what he's done. Fantastic job. But, they lost to Nottingham Forest at home. Can't afford really to do that. We'll see if that comes and bites them on the backside later in the season. Arsenal are dropping points. City are not playing well and yet finding a way to win. And that, or at least not lose against your rivals. So I think that's absolutely crucial. Look, it's interesting, Sam, if you'd have told me one's going to flip-flop and one's not, I wouldn't have put it that way, but I'm with Crookie. I thought it was the right decision. I understand completely where Gary's coming from. He's a man who clearly is under pressure, although I think he should be allowed to do his job. I think it's been an incredibly difficult fixture list at the start. I think if, let him go until Christmas at the very least and just judge where Wolves are then. But look, it wasn't. He wasn't in his eye line. It was clever from Silva. What was it? A 6'5" goalkeeper against probably a 5'6" midfielder being put off. It's the great ball that's come in, and you've got to give credit to Jon Stones.
Yeah.
I think everyone's talking about actually whether it was offside and subjective offside, but Jon Stones in that melee of about 5 different people has gone up and said, "I want to be the hero again." And that's, massive credit to him because it was a wonderful header.
It was a wonderful header. And actually, if you go back to the Arsenal game, big moments, big players, they come up with those big moments. And he certainly displayed that in the early part of this season. And he needs a lot of credit for it. I suppose, and Gary, you mentioned about the tough fixture list. I think that's 6 of the first 8 games that they've played against teams that finished last season in the top 7 of the Premier League. So the fixture list is skewed. And he referenced that, last night when he was talking about the tough start to the season that they've had. He also tried to change the playing style at the beginning of the season. Didn't maybe get the investment that he was hoping to get after selling Max Kilman. They've sold a lot of players over the last couple of years, Wolverhampton Wanderers, and he was trying to sort of get them away from being just dogged and hitting on the counter. But look, he's going to have to go back to that. He knows that. He came up with a brilliant plan yesterday and he almost foiled the very, very best. It was tough. They had to suffer, but they nearly done it, which is why I was really disappointed for him that it didn't go his way.
For the record, Sam, I was disappointed to see that goal be allowed. And you know how much I love Pep Guardiola and how much I've waxed lyrical about Manchester City, how much I still really wanted City to win the title last season and create history and say that I saw it. But I would like someone else to win it now, share it around a little bit. So I was slightly disappointed that goal was disallowed, but it was correctly so. So fair play to City. Yeah,
the only thing that I would say about it, and not harping back on it, we were told at the beginning of the season that referee's call was the almost sacrosanct and that they would only get involved if there was a huge, clear and obvious error. Now, I think because it's so subjective, there was a few calls this week, actually, where subjective calls have been overruled by VARs. Go to Jack Clark at Ipswich, where Michael Oliver then acknowledges afterwards, I can understand why you're upset about it. It's a controversial one. Well, if it's a controversial one, why is the VAR getting involved? Because you've made your decision. That's the referee's call. I thought we were sticking with that. Similarly, this one, referee's call, it is not a factual decision. VAR only overrule in factual situations, unless the assistant on the far side thought that he was standing right in his eye line and he wasn't, and it was proved it wasn't. Then there's no factual decision there. So why is the VAR getting involved? So there might be a little bit of a discussion amongst Wolves fans that maybe the VAR shouldn't have thrown his weight into it. But I think ultimately this was one of those decisions where the outcome eventually was right. It's controversial because it's so late. It changes it automatically changes the outcome of the game because of the timing of the goal. So that's why it's so emotional and people get so wrapped up in it. Why can't Manchester City keep clean sheets, Crook? They've conceded far too many goals this season. It's now 8 domestic games without keeping a shutout.
Well, I don't think we've seen them at their best this season, and I think conceding goals is a part of that. I wasn't overly impressed with City in this game against Wolves. I was impressed with their doggedness and their determination to get the win. But I think, as you mentioned, Gary O'Neill, who beat them, of course, in this fixture last season, came out with a game plan to stifle their attacking threats. We saw very little of Erling Haaland, which was a frustration to most of the country who captained him again, I think, in their fantasy team. But yeah, I still think that they're yet to hit top gear yet. Obviously, we've got the Phil Foden conundrum where, he's not been able to make any kind of impact at all this season, having been their player of the year last year. So there's a lot that's been wrong with City to this point, but you have to give them credit that it's not the City of old, but they're still grinding out wins and they're still right up there, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Scott, Craig Dawson did a man-for-man marking job on Erling Haaland. I mean, I don't know if you've ever done a man-for-man marking job, but just what sort of discipline does that require?
Well, first of all, when he was told that, he would have said, yes, boss. And he would have been thinking, oh, no. And obviously, it would have been a day or two beforehand as well. So
he did it last year, though, in the same game. And then he shut him out last year as well.
Yeah. I mean, look, Craig Dawson, say what you say about him. He is a fantastic pro. He's got a great attitude. He will always give 100%. He's got brilliant character and resilience. And, he'll nudge Erling Haaland when he needs to, and he'll keep him happy when he needs to as well. There is a balance when you come up against top class players. You want to get them off their game, but you don't want to annoy them too much that they say, right, I'm really coming at you here. Unless you genuinely believe that, once they lose it, they've gone. I don't know. I don't know how he's kept him so quiet, really. I've not been able to watch the game live. I only watched it on highlights. I thought he was superb. It's about the reading of the game. It's about the protection you get in front of you. Obviously, he's gone to 3 at the back, so there's the extra man there. And it gives you the ability to go really tight when you've got that third centre half. So even if he now knows that even if he gets done by Haaland, he's got protection behind. Whereas if you're just one of 2 in a back 4, you know that if you go in and you lose it, then suddenly he's at your only other centre half. So I think it's brilliant from Gary, really good tactics. But Craig is the one who's actually had to go out there and do it. Managers can say whatever they want to say. I want this, I want this, I want this. You've got to do it against the best striker in the world, and he did.
Okay, let's get on to Arsenal, who struggled down on the South Coast. Well, Arsenal's lack of discipline has caught up with them once again. Going through the figures, since Mikel Arteta has been in charge at Arsenal, they've had 18 red cards. In the same time frame, their title rivals Manchester City and Liverpool have had 9 and 7 respectively. That is quite some disparity, isn't it? I wonder whether or not that's going to come back and haunt them and cause them a problem as far as winning the title is concerned.
Well, I think it will, and it's not just those stats that back that up. I looked at a few numbers going back even further yesterday when Leicester won the title. They had 3 players sent off, but over the course of a season, that was the last time that a team had managed to win the title, having had 3 red cards in the same campaign. The year that Liverpool pipped City to the title behind closed doors during that COVID-affected season, City had 4 red cards. That's the only time in the last 5 years they've not won the title. Arsene Wenger, on the flip side, used to regularly win championships with multiple sendings off, but it doesn't half hold you back. And you look at the situation with Arsenal this season, they were winning against Brighton when Declan Rice gets himself sent off, so that's 2 points gone. They were winning at Man City when Leandro Trossard got himself sent off, so that potentially is another 2 points gone. And this game obviously was 0-0, and you'd probably have had confidence, even though they weren't at their best, that Arsenal would have gone on and won the match. So you think at the end of the season, those points are going to be pivotal. You can't afford to be giving Manchester City and Liverpool that kind of head start. And again, this is one that seems to have divided opinion. I was there. I called it straight away. It's a red card. It is a clear goal-scoring opportunity. Yes, he's got a lot to do from there, Evan Nilsson, but he is going to go one-on-one with the goalkeeper. I was amazed that Rob Jones, in my opinion, ducked the decision and didn't show the red card straight away in real time and needed the VAR intervention. I thought it was foolhardy from Saliba. I thought it was naive.
Well, I'll take you back to 2021 when Emerick Laporte was sent off against Crystal Palace. And there was a lot of debate at that time whether or not Aymeric Laporte should have been sent off because of the distance between him and the goal. And I think it was Wilfried Zaha who he brought down at the time. And the question was, well, he's got to run another 30 yards and then he's got to take on the goalkeeper. And I suppose this is even further out. So the narratives have changed over the course of the last couple of years because now everybody says, well, there's definitely going to be a red card. I think Rob Jones, I can understand why Rob Jones turned around and said, I'm not sure about this, because there's a huge amount of distance to cover for Evan Nilsson. He's got a long way to go. And the next action is not going to be a shot on goal. In fact, the next 3 actions have got to be right for him to get a decent shot away. So I'm not sure it's an absolute certainty that he's denying a goal-scoring opportunity. And there's an opportunity for Ben White, by the way, to get back in those circumstances. You can't rule out that is going to be the case because he's got a bit of pace about him. So I understand why Rob Jones went safe and gave the yellow card. But I also understand when you look at it, when you see the position of David Raya, where he is, the spin of the ball, all that kind of stuff, and you look at it slowed down, I can understand why the VAR then upgraded it. I'll go back to what I said before, though. Was there enough clear evidence to say that was an absolute howler for the VAR to intervene, Scott?
Do you know what, Sam? It's a really good point. And when you touched on it earlier, I mean, look, I've got the rules here of the denying the goal scoring opportunity. 4 things. The general direction of the play, he was going that way. Likelihood of keeping or gaining control of the ball, he would have done. Location and number of defenders. Now, it's subjective as to whether you think Ben White could have got across. Because the 4th one is the distance between the offence and the goal.
He's on the halfway line.
And it was a long, long way. Absolutely. So, I personally think what we saw, and do you remember where I did the game with you at Selhurst Park? It was Palace-Liverpool, where Virgil van Dijk pulled. I can't remember who he pulled back, and then it was, again, I can't remember that phrase they used, the sustained holding.
Sustained holding.
I think there's been a few of those, and in the international break, Howard Webb has turned around and said, guys, we're having too light a touch. Let's get a little bit more involved, because ultimately, these aren't the right decisions. And then you go back to the grey area. I was saying at the time, it's a penalty. It should have been overturned. But I like the philosophy that VAR is now having. Seems like just in the last couple of weeks, it's swung back the other way. And now VAR are getting more and more involved. And that's where we now need to be careful, because then you become into even more subjective decisions. I think the majority probably think it's a red.
Because, Scott, the idea was this season, don't get involved in grey, get involved in black and white. Yeah, and we're straying into the grey again.
I think the majority would think that was a red card, but it wasn't enough to say that's a clear and obvious error. And I think we've seen a few just at the weekend where VAR starting to get a little bit more involved now.
So basically, the other issue is that the penalty that then David Raya gives away, I don't think he makes any chance of playing the ball. He's got no chance of playing the ball in that circumstances. So I thought, if you look at the letter of the law, if you've got no possibility of playing the ball and you don't make a genuine attempt to go for it, then you should be sent off. He could have been sent off for that. In my view, if he had been, no one would have batted an eyelid, because he was never, ever going to get there. What I'm told by officials is because he dived towards the ball, that is considered to be an attempt to play the ball, so therefore it's not the denial of a goal-scoring opportunity. In real life, it was denying a goal-scoring opportunity. And possibly, in my book, he could have been sent off. He certainly should have got a yellow, so the VAR should have looked at it, and he didn't even get that. So there was a mistake there. So I'm not sure that Rob Jones covered himself in glory over the course of the 90 minutes anyway, but what did happen was that Arsenal walked away without anything, and that is a massive, massive issue for Mikel Arteta at the start of another big week where they've got European football. Then they've got a huge game next weekend, Alex, that we're going to be at against Liverpool, and they're going to have to try and negotiate that without Saliba. And we know from the end of last season just how important he is.
Yeah, because Jakub Kiwior had a nightmare when he came on. It was his error that led to the penalty, and he was in that unwanted position. I don't know if Scott's ever had this humiliation, but he was subbed on, obviously, after Saliba's red card, and then he was subbed back off again after that mistake. So that's going to damage his confidence.
The fact that you asked that question, Crookie, I'm really hurt, but the answer is no, I haven't.
But it's a problem, when you break up that Saliba-Gabriel partnership. I think we saw again, not that we really needed to be reminded, but just how integral Bukayo Saka is for Arsenal, because they look really toothless in attack as well. One shot on target in the whole game. Martinelli probably should score, And actually, when we've got more time, we might look into his form, because I think his confidence looks a little bit shot away at the moment as well. No Ødegaard, and Liverpool, a team very much in the groove. So it's a big game for Arsenal, particularly because of the points they've dropped already. I thought Kai Havertz was relatively anonymous as well.
Do you know what, Sam? It's not just Saliba. It's obviously Ødegaard, and we don't know about Saka. They weren't great going forward, and now they've lost their best defender as well. At this moment in time, I would favour Liverpool to win. And if Liverpool beat Arsenal, then that's a massive statement. Just going back to the sendings off, if you look at the points that they've dropped this season, it's been the game where they've gone down to 10 men.
Yeah.
So they have to find a way. I think the Declan Rice one was innocuous. I feel for him, but to the letter of the law, it's a sending off. Trossard one was stupid, and I think the Saliba one, he's not thought. Now, I'd just like to doff my cap, actually, to Iriola, Bournemouth, and Julian Araujo, especially the right back. If you watch the first 20 minutes, he has not given Trossard any time on the ball at all. He's had to go backwards pretty much every single time. And then you look at the pass that Trossard did, which led to Saliba's mistake and red card. He's feeling that Araujo is going to be right behind him and under pressure. Yeah. And when you're not having a good start and the fullback's got you in your pocket early on, suddenly you're not thinking and concentrating on that first touch. He should have taken a touch. He didn't. First time, to no one. He's put Saliba under pressure, who's then made a split-second decision, which was wrong. Arsenal under pressure. And I agree with Crookie. They weren't playing well, but I think 11v11, they would have found out a way to win. And then, of course, Arsenal were out-Arsenaled with the set piece. Brilliant set piece as well for 1-0. So well done, Bournemouth. But Arsenal absolutely need to bounce back. It's a big week coming up.
Yeah, Sean Cooper, who designs the attacking set piece, got a lot of plaudits from Ryan Christie. It was a brilliant finish, though, by him as well. And just an all-round, very well choreographed move, and I think they deserve a lot of credit. But they are a very good team, Bournemouth. I'm sorry, I know that we said it when he first came in, that they will end up playing high-pressure football. It took a little while for them to get into that. They've done that last year. They were the best at pressing. They've shown that they don't give you any time whatsoever to breathe. They make life difficult for you. It doesn't always work. Sometimes they can be unpicked quite easily because they commit a lot of men high up the pitch or whatever. But when it works really well. And for a team like Bournemouth to cause so many problems for some of the bigger lads in the Premier League already this season, they should have beaten Chelsea, by the way, earlier in the campaign. You know, they had a penalty which they missed, and they had great chances in that game. They should have overcome Chelsea in that match. They have beaten Arsenal now. The few statements that they've made already this season that they ain't going away, and I think they've got a great chance of finishing in the top 10 this season. And certainly Bill Foley, who has committed a lot of funds to that football club, yes, will want to be able to see the fruits of his spending. Manchester United beat Brentford by 2-1. Now, I think they played quite well, to be honest, especially second half. I think they did really well. And one of the key facets to that is Alejandro Garnacho. He's got to play on the left-hand side. He has to be in the team. I know he's young. I know he doesn't always do the work he's supposed to do. But this is a kid who can be special. He basically dragged Manchester United through their dark period in this match because he's got so much skill and trickery and ability to create the ball. He unsettles defences. He took his goal brilliantly, came up with a brilliant couple of passes in the match as well. I thought he was terrific.
Do you know what? I actually enjoyed my Saturday night for a change. Picked up a nice curry on the way back from Bournemouth, sat and watched the highlights and thought, this is all right. This is like the old days. 2 excellent United goals. You're right to highlight Garnacho, but I'd like to pick up Marcus Rashford as well, who is now starting to consistently play well. You know, back to the form, dare I say it, where he was a couple of years ago. And you know what? Actually, what I liked about this was the furious reaction to the Brentford goal. You know, De Ligt in particular. You could see how much that hurt him. I mean, I would question the United medical team. I think they should have got that issue dealt with a lot earlier so that he wasn't in a position where he was off the pitch. But clearly, that fired them up. There was a bit of an incident, I think, in the tunnel at half-time. You'll make Darren Fletcher involved in that and could face some FA action. But I don't mind that because for too long now, United players have been accepting of defeat and accepting of poor standard performances. The fact they got agitated and came out and put on a show in the second half, I think is a really good sign. And I was listening to Eric Ten Hag speaking at the Northwest Football Writers Awards last night. He was having a bit of a jibe at our colleague Neil Custis. He was warming up for his trip to Fenerbahce. And I think I texted you before the game, Sam, when he walked into the press conference on Thursday or Friday and said, "Oh, lovely to see you all again." I admire the fella. You know, the thick skin that he's got is like nothing I've ever seen before, I don't think.
I love this. He's flip-flopping again. He's now his mate again. He's a little board genius once more. Oh, dear. How long is it before he comes back and gets the LBG tag? On the De Ligt thing. Oh, dear. I actually thought that it was... There's nothing that Sam Barrett, the referee, can do about this because ultimately he was bleeding and he had to go off the field of play. You know, there was a lot of blood at that moment in time. It was the third time that he went off as well. So, you know, I don't want to dig out the medical stuff. I know Crook said they should have done better, but I don't know the situation, the depth of the wound or whatever. So I can't say it should have been this, it should have been that. But ultimately, something else needed to be done. They have to either accept that he had to come off because they couldn't patch it up, or they have to patch it up slightly better. There's nothing that the referee can do. He has to let him go off and get treatment at that moment in time. And also, let's not sort of excuse the fact that Diogo Dalot doesn't follow Ethan Pinnock. He lets him go. And because he lets him go, he scores the goal. I don't care about disparity of size or anything like that. If you switch off at a corner and let your man get in front of you, you are going to concede goals. So, you know, there's a bit of personal responsibility there as well. I want to talk to you about Brentford, because last season they dropped more points from winning positions than anybody else in the Premier League, 30 of them. They've already dropped 11 points from winning positions. Thomas Frank is held as a very good coach, and I think he is, by the way, and I think a team with greater resources, he'll end up doing a brilliant job, and he will end up moving on in the end. However, I do think that's a vulnerability with Brentford.
Look, I think, by the way, yet another set piece goal. A little bit more of a basic one this time, and it is the worst possible thing. I mean, it's basics that you don't make substitutions when you're defending a set piece. You don't want your big centre half to be going off getting treatment when you're defending a set piece. But still, right place, right time, right delivery. Well done, Keith Andrews again, who's the set piece coach at Brentford. There's only so much you can do when you're in the massive ocean that is the Premier League, and you're just a small island, which is basically what Brentford is. Thomas Frank is trying to set players up. He's very good in the set pieces through Keith. He tries to do patterns of play. But when you get that first goal, that first goal normally is so crucial in a game. But ultimately, quality players and quality substitutions, when everybody gets tired, plays a massive part. Now, you're at Brentford where, look, they're all good players, but they're not top class players. So where Thomas Frank, if he were at a higher club, would be able to make these substitutions, would be able to stop someone, take someone off who's perhaps tiring a little bit, and then they could kick on again. They're just not able to do that. So at this moment in time, it's really interesting. I heard an interview with him. I can't remember who at talkSPORT was speaking to him. And it was, do you feel you've not run its course, but you've taken Brentford as high as you can possibly go? And his answer wasn't a, no, I can kick on and we can do it. It was, yes, probably. And I just think with all the good work he's done and the amount of time he's been there, I wouldn't be surprised if a good job offer does come up, then he does go and take it. But it's going to have to be a perfect one because, you know, the grass is not always greener.
So the little bald genius could be replaced by the long-haired lover from West London. You never know; it could happen. It'd be the Great Dane that he'll be talking about in the next few years. You never know. Quick word on Tottenham Hotspur. They beat West Ham by 4-1. Second half display was quite good. Actually, I thought they were not very good in the first. Not very good. That's not true. Just not as good as they needed to be in the first half. They weren't as clinical as West Ham in the first half. They weren't progressing the ball fast enough. And actually, we said that during commentary. There was a little bit of hesitancy about them. So when they switched at half time and they took James Maddison off, I thought, well, you know, that's either a really bold decision or an injury. Actually, it turned out to be not only a bold decision, but an absolute tactically brilliant decision, because what it did is it allowed them to win the ball back quicker through Pat Matterface, and he's so good at releasing the ball, and the fourth goal that they scored is an example of that. Instead of going into the game, it was a long time ago now, the big issue to come out of it for me was the collapse of West Ham. Now, they've won 2 games this season, one of them against Crystal Palace, which wasn't particularly good, and another one against Ipswich Town, 2 teams in the bottom 4 of the division. What is the situation with Lopetegui, Crook?
Well, I'm told the players aren't necessarily convinced by him. And I think there's been one or two issues, isn't there? The incident, I think, was at Brentford with him and Mohamed Kudus, and a bust up at half time that was played down a little bit by my sources at West Ham. But obviously Kudus has, again, got a bit hot-headed and got himself sent off in this game. Didn't change the outcome, but it's not a great look when one of your star players does that. They spent a lot of money on Nicholas Füllkrug. He's still struggling with an Achilles issue, which means that Antonio is playing, and it means it's not really that different to what David Moyes was doing. And yeah, I think there are some question marks. I think that win against Ipswich just before the international break will buy him some time, but we know that West Ham fans are not renowned for their patience, and they're already starting to turn. And there were some members of the hierarchy that weren't entirely sure about the appointment in the first place. So clearly, the more results go against them, their concerns are going to get louder.
Okay, thank you very much to Scott Minto and to Alex Crook. Thanks for tuning in as well. Appreciate that. Back on Thursday when we build up to all the weekend's football. Crook and I will be in Istanbul together on Thursday, so we're very much looking forward to that.